I was from her address book, I guess, because she just rolled on to the next project.
And not that I am at all comparing this mediocre podcast that I do to a big budget Hollywood film. What I have, in conjunction to what you're saying, what I have definitely learned since I started this show years ago now is it is always the foreign crowd that is the most most happy and continue to connect with me on a monthly bit. I don't know if you know who Sonny Pang is, but I talk to Sonny probably every other day. And with the American crowd, or if I review an American film and have a guest on from an American production, more often than not, never hear from him. Never hear from him again. It's just like,
interesting.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, you promoted my work for free. I appreciate it, and we're done here. And that is just not the case with, say, Sonny in Singapore or Zaire in Malaysia, or I mean, even you and I, after the first show, like, we've continued to just stay in touch.
Absolutely.
And it's just, it is weird. It's such a kind of depressing thing about the business that it because, like, for me...
It is strange, yeah.
For me, I would think that you would want to, if for nothing else, even if the reasons are only selfish, you would want to keep, if you had a good time with someone, you would want to keep those connections at least lively, on the off chance that, you know, again, even for selfish reasons, oh, well, I may be able to use XYZ for this production, and it's just we just as a culture.
Is it? Sure. I mean, I think the idea of maintaining connection with someone like yourself, who's obviously, you know, really knowledgeable and devotes a huge amount of time for, I imagine that it's not a hugely well-paid thing. You're doing it for love more than money. That people should respect you in East and West because of your commitment and your energy. I found the same thing when I was editing Impact Magazine, though, kind of what you're saying, that there was a disparity between people who you forged friendships with or connections with and those who it was like they got from you what they wanted and they moved on. But I guess it's life. The other thing on a creative side I've learned to my cost is that often when you're working with actors, other creative people, you go through the kind of the cauldron of making a movie. And afterwards, it's like Rashomon. Everybody has a very different perspective. I mean, you might meet Phoenix. Maybe she'll call you after this podcast and say, I want to go on and I'm going to tell you all my side of it. And then she goes on and says it was horrible and I had a terrible time and the food was no good in Nan Hai and on Beach Spite the director didn't like me, which was kind of true. And you know, and then they ripped me off on the third film, blah, 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 and that would be her perspective. And she goes away and maybe she has this resentment. And I have no idea because she has never shared it with me. And I, in my retrospective, my thought of her, never anything but friendly, never had any wish in my heart other than that she succeed and that we be friends. But there's a number of people like that. And if you met them, if you had them on your show, maybe they would say, what a horrible time we had. And I would go, really? Michael Biehn, let's talk about Michael. So when Bloodbond was moving forward, a key thing at that time was when you want to finance an independent film, you need to talk to all the sales companies and the overseas distributors to see who you can have as the lead actor who's bankable. And everybody had said to me, listen, Michael is great in other people's films, you know, if he's in The Terminator or The Rock, but he can't carry a movie himself. The films he starred in have not been successful. So you're better off getting somebody like Dolph Lundgren who can carry the movie. And I'm a loyal guy, so I was like, I promised Michael. So, you know, and in my arrogance, I was like, I'm going to do for him what Tarantino did for Travolta. I'm going to bring him back. You know, balls on this guy, right? And I think in retrospect, if I had it to do over, I was trying to find the right director for the project. And at one point in my conversation with Michael, he said he would always have the idea to direct and would like to. And I thought, this guy's worked with James Cameron, he's worked with Michael Bay. He must have learned something about directing. And I think I made a mistake in that I should just really have had him as an actor and had somebody else direct or directed it myself. Because I'm not saying Michael could not be a good director. I think he can. He was the wrong guy for this material because he came into it from a very a certain kind of American perspective where he didn't buy into any of the mystical aspects of the story. And he wanted to bring in elements and things that he was familiar with. Like our original idea for the new version is he would be a fish out of water, like the one white guy among all the Asians. But then he wanted to bring his girlfriend over to be in the movie with him. So everything was changed to kind of fit the movie he wanted to make. And every day we were in tension because he had a vision for the film he wanted to make. And I had the idea of the film I thought we should be making. And then the other problem, I think, was that he had, in my view, all of the elements necessary in Nanhai at A Studios to make a movie with. But it was a bit like a poor craftsman blames his tools. He would say, oh, you didn't give me this, you didn't give me that. And like, we gave you everything. But I think he did not have a fully realized vision other than to obstruct mine. He didn't say, I think the movie should be like this. Because I work with directors like that. My good friend Mathieu Vechler, a French director, is just like that. I'll say, I think it should be like this. And then he tells me what he thinks it should be like. And his way is better. So as a smart producer, I say, great, you do it your way, because you're the director, and this is a director's medium. Michael didn't really have an alternate vision. He was like the opposition party in government. So he directed like he was in opposition. So that made it uncomfortable. And I don't think it allowed him to do his best work. And in retrospect, it's always the producer's fault, in my opinion. I should have not invited him to direct, and probably in the early process, when I realized how out of step he was with this material, I should have somehow found a polite way to replace him. But we soldiered on, and then he left, and we reshot a bunch of stuff. And sometime after that, as see above, I think he became resentful about the fact that we had reshot the film, because we tried to sell the movie as he had left it, and it didn't work. So we had to take it back and recut it for the investors' sake, recut it, re-edit it, put some of the action in. And I was helped immeasurably by a guy called Anthony Zito, who, again, I these days probably have a difficult relationship with, but at the time was a wonderful colleague who came aboard to really, bail my ass out for no money, by the way, to shoot the action scenes for the movie. And so Michael took umbrage at this. And, it's a shame because in my mind, I would have kept working with him as an actor and considered him a friend going forward.
So when I actually watched this film, it reminded me of something that just came out not too long ago. In fact, you may have seen it and or enjoyed it. Did you see the Edward Norton Motherless Brooklyn about the private eye with Tourette's? Did you happen to see that one?
No, you know what's funny? I see everything, but I've not seen that. Did this film remind you of that? In what regard?
In the regard, so we're talking about Michael Biehn as a director. In the regard that I think, so the Blood Bond story, I think is really, really good. Like I would watch that. In fact, and this is not to disrespect Shadowguard at all, because like I said, I still think on an action level it works significantly better than most American films. But I feel that the piece suffered because of exactly what you're talking about, and also the same with Motherless Brooklyn, where it was written, directed, and stars Edward Norton. And I was watching it, and as it kind of unfolds, I remember thinking over and over again, Edward's wearing too many hats right now, and unfortunately the piece the piece is suffering because of it. So and I feel that way with Shadowguard, where you can tell that there are just conflicting ideas that are trying to be pushed into one. And so, I mean, like, I don't think, well, what always makes me laugh, I know that, like, money's at stake, but, like, it's kind of mind-blowing to me that a bad time on a production means that, like, professionally you can't. I just don't know why you're not allowed to fail in film, and not to say that I just don't know why you can't have a bad time.
Well, God knows. I consider this. I mean, I think you're defined by. I would not say you're defined by your failures, but I do think you're defined by how you respond to your failures. And, my response was that I'd like to just address this because I think it's quite an interesting, maybe an object lesson. In ways how to deal with failure and how not to deal with it. Because obviously I was disappointed with the film. I felt we should have made a better film that sold better. That said, so after it, there was different approaches one could take. First one is, of course, that the first thing is after Michael's cut hadn't sold, I could have abandoned the film and gone off and done something else. But instead we reshot it, recut it, brought it back out into the market, and at least it got theatrical release in Hong Kong, and it made some measure of its money back for the investors, number one. Number two, I thought, you know what? I could easily spend 10 years sitting in a bar telling people about my bad experience on The Blood Bond and what the movie should have been. So I used that as the impetus to write the novel, which I believe we'll talk about more in a bit. But I kind of like took a negative and turned it into a positive. The other thing is, a year later, I had the opportunity to make a French-financed film called Borderland in the same studio space. And I set myself the challenge that with half the budget of the first film, I would make a film twice as good and learn all my lessons from Blood Bond by going back to the same studio, working with the same people. I mean, Henry Look, God bless him. Are you familiar with Basil Fawlty Towers, the old John Cleese series?
Of course I am.
Well, Henry was like if Basil Fawlty ran a movie studio in China rather than a hotel in Torquay. But he was a lovely guy. But he was, if you can imagine Basil Fawlty running a movie studio, that was Henry. So I went back to the same studios and we shot. If you can find it, I wish you'd look at it. I think it's an amazing film. Covert Operation, aka Borderland. And so that again, turning a negative into a positive, which was, I had a bad experience on this movie. I'm going to come back and show everybody what I could have done, both in a film, which is Borderland, and in a book, which is the book, The Blood Bond. The one mistake that I made, which I won't make again, was that there was at that time, it wasn't as sophisticated as what we're doing now, but there were chat rooms talking about film. And Michael Bean definitely had a very, a significant online fan following. And he was interviewed and he was just trashed the film up one side and down the other. And me and experience in China and everything. And you'd think we'd horsewhipped him every day for the appreciation he gave us. I mean, my take on it was, look, you weren't really acting in a lot. You'd never directed. This idiot, me, put together $1 million for you to direct a movie and star in a movie and go to China and have this new market and this new experience. In my view, you didn't really take that opportunity and run with it as you should have done, for whatever reason. And now you go on the media and you talk about, oh, it was terrible and that place was awful and Bey was this and that. So then the gentleman doing the, I guess, whatever that would be, chat group, whatever the platform was, maybe just a website, writes to me and, oh, have you seen this? What do you think? And like an idiot, I reply. So I write back and say, well, I appreciate Michael maybe was not the best person to shoot a film in China. Culturally, linguistically, it was incredibly challenging. But nonetheless, my memory is we had a pretty good friendship and experience, which is true, by the way, despite the creative differences. I don't think we finished the film on a bad note. Definitely not. And we worked our way through it. And I'm sorry he feels this way. The film looks good now, and I hope he'll go and direct more stuff. And then this went out, And some guys like, oh, look at this horribly creepy reply from Bey. And it's the last time I think I contributed to that kind of platform. I said, this is why I'm not going to do this anymore. Because what you wanted was for me to get into a spitting match